Hi, I'm Jon Biemer, and it's a pleasure to be here, an honor to be here with you. I'm going to start with this parable that some of you have already heard. It's called the parable of the spoons, and I think it applies to what I have to say. One day a man saw God, and he asked, what is heaven like and what is hell like? God showed the man two doors. Inside the first one was a large round table with a big bowl of vegetable stew. It smelled delicious and the man's mouth watered. But the people sitting around it were thin and sickly, and they appeared to be famished and unhappy. They were holding long spoons, the length of their arms, and they could get the spoons into the water and into the stew, but they couldn't get it back to their mouths. They couldn't feed themselves. The man shuddered at the sight, and in their misery, their suffering, God said, "This is hell." Then God showed him, the man, the other door. Open the door, it appears to be the same scene. Big round table, big bowl of stew, everybody holding long spoons. Except these people are laughing and conversing and a little bit more plump, obviously happier. And he could see that they were feeding each other rather than themselves. And everybody was satisfied. They even enjoyed feeding each other. And God said, "This is heaven." That story's an old story. It's credited to Rabbi Haim of Remchak, which is now in Lithuania, and it's been translated into Chinese and all that. And sometimes you have the rice bowl with the long chalk sticks. You get the idea. So you can hum to yourself that little bit of interim music between that. I'd like to begin some of my talks with this, honoring the people and the place where I am. And it's traditional to honor the Native Americans and that sort of thing, but I'm actually talking about you and Hillsborough. So, for instance, you are a certified green sanctuary. You, and I'm not specifically saying the people in this room, although I bet a few of them are here, but you as a congregation have gone through considerable steps to get there. And I looked at this, and we have worship, we have children's curriculums, we have connection with the community garden. Yes. My only pause is that was 2005. So maybe there needs to be a little bit more energy into that in the future. I rode here on the Max. You're 3 blocks from the Max station. I very much appreciate that. Anybody that had to do with getting that Max to come here, congratulate you. In any event, you can take credit for it. Passed by a Restore on the way here, Beaverton. How many people have used the Restore? Yeah, so, you know, I'm preaching to the choir, right? Okay. And let's see what else we have. Back then you talked about doing Earth Day events. I think now this year you're participating in the community Earth Day events. So things evolve. So let me shift gears a little bit and tell you how I came to the 3 C's of sustainability. That's the title of the sermon, right? I wrote this book, Our Environmental Handprints. It has 178 different things you can do that are proactive about taking care of the earth and you know, things like upgrading your home, insulating the church, donating to worthy causes, environmental causes, talking to the kids about sustainability, that sort of thing. And it sold well enough that the publisher said, "What do you want to do for your next book?" That's a dream that I never imagined would happen. And it took me a month to figure out what I actually did want to do. But I realized that a lot of the people I knew were kind of operating in business as usual. These people tend to have values pretty similar to mine. So it's not about a problem with values, I think, that prevents a lot of us from doing great things. So what is it? So that was the actual question that motivated the second book was, what motivates people to take care of the earth? And by the way, the people. Because when you take care of the earth, you're usually taking care of the people. So with that, I collected 150 stories, a bunch of interviews, and I learned a lot. I got a lot of stories. I'm going to share one of those right now, just to kind of get a feel for the stories I collected. Pat Warninger. She she retired as a school teacher, high school. She had this sense that she was going to spend more time with her grandkids when, you know, she was more free after retiring, right? Well, turns out grandkids have other things to do besides spend time with their grandmother. So after feeling sorry for herself for a while, she took an intensive on how to become a change maker. It's an 8-day thing offered by the Pachamama Alliance, 8-week thing. And I took it myself. We could talk to you about that later on. And part of that, she saw this movie, An Inconvenient Truth. How many seen that movie? Yeah. So she kind of got motivated to go back to her town, Henrietta, New York, and see what she could do. She gathered a few friends together, and they decided to hold monthly presentations at the library. The monthly presentations at the library were like on composting and organic gardening. Maybe a local organization got to talk about their thing, that kind of thing. At some point, she was able to contact the city manager and found out the city manager had values that were consistent with sustainability, but really no time on his hand to do sustainability type stuff. So that group of people morphed into a kind of a committee to provide input to the city manager. And over time, the city adopted ordinances for better, more sustainable housing, more insulated buildings, better HVAC systems for the commercial buildings, putting together zoning ordinance to allow this one piece of land to become a community solar project. So you see how we have a little bit of momentum gathering from this idea of, what do I do when my grandkids won't pay attention to me? And as that got to be successful, she got involved with the Certified Climate Smart Communities program of the state of New York. And Henrietta, New York became one of those communities. And I think there were let's say 140 around the state. And they had bronze, silver, and gold certifications. And Henrietta only qualified for silver. But a lot of the work that she fostered earned that silver certification. Now she goes around to towns and talks to them about getting involved with that program. So now you see how there's a little bit of momentum that goes from there. So she's one of the everyday heroes that how they make a difference. Okay, so I collected that story and a bunch of other stories, and I summarized them. It was time to turn in the manuscript, and I summarized them. And okay, so one thing we know is that people at all ends of the age spectrum can help with sustainability. Kids can do art projects that relate to sustainability. Young lady in Los Angeles, there was an oil pumping rig near her home, making her sick, and she led a movement to stop oil drilling in Los Angeles County. So we have the young, and we have the retired people, and we have people mid-career, like this one guy working with oil drilling company, decided, this isn't the future I want. And so he left his career, went back to MIT, which he probably had enough money in the bank to do that, and got involved with a professor who had this new technology for drilling. And this could be applied to geothermal drilling. And it's sort of like your microwave. It melts the rock rather than grinds the rock. And it can go much deeper. And if you go deep enough, geothermal is everywhere. And the dream is to convert retired power plants, coal power plants in particular, into geothermal plants using this technology. So we see how somebody mid-career can take the skills, the management skills and all that, and a professor who's in no position to actually start a company, put those two together and you've got things. And they're doing demonstration projects this year, and they're in the process of scaling up. So what are those 3 C's? So the point I'm making is, okay, everybody can do this one way or another. Every place can do this. I have 8 featured stories and 8 featured cities and 5 featured Indian tribes and what they're doing all over the country. So that's nice, but it's kind of like, not brand new. It took me another month or so. Actually, my daughter kind of encouraged me. She thought, why don't you get some good interviews? And I said, what if that interviewer actually asked the question, what does motivate people? And I realized I hadn't answered that question yet. But over a period of a month or so, I did come to an answer, and this is what I want to share with you. 3 C's. The first one is caring. We usually don't do great things if we don't care. So, caring sometimes is a result of playing in the woods when you're a kid. Several of my people actually did that. One volunteer at the Audubon Society in Florida, her dad took her to the Everglades as kind of a regular thing, and she fell in love with the Everglades and all the life that is in the Everglades. So caring is the fertile ground. Okay, but something needs to kick us into gear, get us to actually want to do something. And I call that something a catalyst. Now, some catalysts are negative, like a hurricane coming through, mowing down a town. No, actually, this is a tornado. Mowed down the town in Kansas, and they decided to rebuild more sustainably. That catalyst helped them become something beyond what they could have become without that. A woman nursing her husband through Alzheimer's realized that the human race is kind of like experiencing Alzheimer's when it comes to the really important stuff, like the climate and like getting along in one way or another. So those are negative catalysts, and you're going to get those now and then, whether you like it or not. I like to think in terms of the positive catalysts. That movie, An Inconvenient Truth, at least 3 of the people I interviewed were inspired by that movie to do the great things that they did. I'm hoping that this talk will be inspiring to somebody as a catalyst, if you will. I met somebody at an Earth Day event, and they were with a recycling committee, and I got involved with the recycling committee. So the Earth Day event was kind of a catalyst to get engaged. So it's big scale, small scale, all sorts of different things. But I realized that it's usually more than one catalyst somebody needs to get going. It's like, you have this one great story, but then that great story gets sort of like history. But if you keep experiencing things, here's a woman that living on the slopes of Mount Hood. She learned sewing from her great-grandmother. Well, she learned crochet from her great-grandmother, sewing from her grandmother. So she knew how to make clothes. And, okay, so that's a catalyst. You make clothes, right? That's good stuff. And she had a business of selling clothes from Goodwill and thrift stores online on Etsy. And she could make money doing that, except COVID came along. And that dried up her way to get clothing. This is her story, so I don't want to question the fact of that. But what she did was she realized she had a lot of fabric laying around from clothing that needed to be repaired and all that sort of thing. And she started making original clothing from that fabric. This evolved her business from taking thrift store clothing and selling it, which is a good thing, to creating clothing from vintage fabric, her term. And now she's creating original clothing, selling it at good prices, and making a living. And where did she get the vintage fabric from? The bins at Goodwill. The stuff that's headed for the landfill. She's got 3 people that regularly bring her stuff to work to do that. Catalysts, multiple catalysts. Well, okay, so caring and catalyst, that ought to be good enough. You know, you care and you get going, right? The problem is you need help. Most people with good ideas don't get very far if they don't get help. Maybe they ask for it, maybe somebody offers them. So one of my favorite stories is Greta Thunberg. You've heard of her. She's the young lady that sat on the steps of the Swedish parliament saying Sweden's not doing enough for global warming. A very important person in that story is the second girl that sat next to her. Okay, and later on, other school kids came up, and they started this idea of a school strike. You know, we're going to take Friday off to worry about the world. The other 4 days of the week, we're going to worry about, you know, learning to read and write. You know, so she went on to speak to the United Nations and so forth. How did she get across the ocean without flying? Her father sailed a boat. So her father's supporting her also, and her mother. Turns out she's a special needs child when she was going, and they were just glad she was doing something because she was having a hard time. Okay, so this collaboration thing is really necessary if you're going to scale your ideas and do something that meets a lot of needs. So that's my 3 C's. Caring, catalyst, and collaboration. Yeah, let's repeat that. Caring, catalyst, and collaboration. Yeah. So that's the takeaway I'd like you to have, just because, you know, you should be able to remember the sermon, you know, 2 or 3 days after I speak. You know, it took me a while, and actually, since I added that in at the end of the book, there's a punchline after I get to that point where you get the 3 C's, right? And say to I say, you know, I don't have much time. I got to turn this in because the publisher's waiting and all that sort of. And I say, we ought to turn that around a little bit now. We ought to be providing caring, catalyst, and collaboration to each other. So that's where that stone soup, or that, I'm sorry about the big, where the long spoons story resonates with me. Because if we help other people care, and we help move somebody into gear, and if we support them and their crazy ideas, because most ideas are outside the box if they're, you know, really original, then we are creating sustainability because we're setting up the circumstances. And you don't have to have brilliant ideas to do that. You have to look around and see who is trying to do something and support them. So let's just kind of mention a few things that you can do to help. You can support the library. The library is an institution that is a paragon of sustainability, right? Reuse all the books, and now they're getting to the point where they don't even bother putting them on paper. And now the Hillsborough Library has a thing, let's see, where is it here? A library of things, which you can check out. Pressure cookers, radon detectors, digital cameras, stuff you don't need to use every day, for special occasions. Pasta maker, dryer vent cleaning kit. They have hundreds of things. Okay, so when you need some of these crazy little things, check the library out first before buying it. You know, I did some research, I have an engineer background and so forth. There is pounds of material, of earth that has to be dug up for everything that's made. A cell phone takes, I don't remember the number now, but it's a small mountain to create a cell phone. So, by the way, go to the cell phone repair people. I interviewed one in Meadville, Pennsylvania. He estimated he could get another 2 years of life out of a phone on average. Same thing with computer. Okay, so there's people out there that do this kind of thing. They're in town here. You don't have to go to Pennsylvania. There's a company that has 300 outlets, a CPR. I don't know whether they're here or not, but they're around the country. So think 3 times before you move up to the next model. Do you need it? And usually you save money while you're at it, but I'm more interested in how much earth you're saving. Now, something I do just to give you something new to think about is called a Genius Kit. Genius Kit is where you take a bunch of stuff you would normally recycle and give it to the people that are participating. Usually they're kids, but I think it's an adult thing too. And say take 2-3 hours. Let's see what you can come up with out of this stuff. How do you craft this? And I did a Genius Kit with my 2 grandkids Saturday. Was that yesterday? Seems like a long time ago. No, it was a few days ago. Anyways, so my youngest grandson, 8 years old, he created a kind of a robot-y thing with a couple boxes, right? By the way, I had boxes, dividers, and toilet paper tubes. Those are the main ingredients. The 13-year-old created a human-like figure with all those toilet paper tubes being arms and limbs. I took the box, the dividers, cut them up in various ways, and made myself a mountain range. You know, but the point is, you can have fun, you can learn how to use the tools, or teach the kids how to use the tools, and they start to value this stuff rather than see it as garbage. So I think I'm going to let it go at that for now, and I've got a couple of closing thoughts we'll do after the closing hymn, right? Yep. Thank you.